Hello and welcome to this episode of Knowledge Enthusiast Reacts, this time with the worst video game in history that helped sink a titan of the industry by Today I Found Out with Simon Whistler, if you have heard of him. My name is Ossi, and this is my new channel where I will react to or analyze several videos about history, video games, and such stuff, just to gain some knowledge, to share some knowledge, and short introduction to me. My name is Ossi. I'm from Germany. I'm born in East Germany, but raised in West Germany in Hamburg. I'm 31 years old. And I am currently unemployed, but I was a history student without degree though, and I was a video game journalist, and until last month I worked as a video game support agent. So I have some knowledge about history, I have some knowledge about video games, but I'm in no way an expert. But I think this might get nice. Excuse my English if if you have a hard time understanding me, just let me know in the comments. If you like the video, like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's just begin. The worst video game in history that helped sink a titan of the industry. Just before we start, you will hear a lot of amps here, and we will pause sometimes. For my first videos, which I will record closely together, maybe all in the same night as I do this one, it will mostly be videos I have already seen, so more analysis than it will be a reaction. But this I actually haven't seen yet, but as video games and video game journalism is part of my life, I'm quite sure I know what they will talk about. They will maybe talk about the video game crash of the late 70s, early 80s, when, at least in the Western world, consoles were a thing of the past and seen as outdated, more or less, because there was a couple of bad games, rushed games, especially E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which was actually buried somewhere in the USA. It was so bad. They dig the hole, they throw in the cartridges, and then they I think they went and got concrete above of that. So and it was considered or thought that this was more or less the end of video games in the term of home video games, consoles and such, until Nintendo came around and in 1983 started with Mario and the not the Super NES, the old first Famicom, I guess what's the original name, or Nintendo Entertainment System in the West, which was sold, I guess, 50,000 consoles were tried to be sold in New York in the holiday season of 84, I guess. And when they were a success, then Nintendo went ahead and marketed it worldwide. So yeah, let's just start the video. Okay, you can tell this is my first video I record, because when I hit the space bar, actually the recording went down. So let's just start.
This video is brought to you by Star Conflict, a free, fast-paced online space action game featuring large-scale battles. Play Star Conflict for free and support this channel.
I think that's okay.
Spaceship and 3 days of account boost as a bonus.
I will
link below.
Let the
Let's get
sponsor
started.
So, video is from 2019, so I guess.
On June the 11th, 1982, E.T. entered Elliot's toolshed and into the hearts of humans across the world. Roger Ebert famously said that the Steven Spielberg directed film was not simply a good movie, it is one of those movies that brush away our cautions and win our hearts. President Reagan and First Lady Nancy screened the movie at the White House, and while watching, the president reportedly looked like a 10-year-old kid. It was reported that Princess Diana cried while watching The Lovable Alien. It made nearly $800 million at the box office. Adjusted for inflation, that's nearly $2 billion today, making it the highest-grossing movie ever at the time. In every sense of the word, E.T. the Extraterrestrial was a phenomenon and a money-making machine in a variety of ways.
And this is a problem that many video games have when they try to adopt the succession formula of a movie, of a book or something, without considering the source material and with only money in mind, I guess. I have actually never seen E.T. in full. I remember I saw snippets of it, and I know the famous scenes, the famous quotes, like with the bicycle in front of the moon and such, and E.T. calling home and this stuff. Let's continue.
Atari was founded almost exactly 10 years before the release of E.T. on June the 27th, 1972 by Nolan Bushnell, the same gentleman who founded Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time, by the way, as well as Ted Dabney. Only 3 months later, the company installed their first Pong arcade game, originally meant to be simply a training exercise for Alan Alcorn and not to be released to the public, in a bar in Sunnyvale, California, called Andy Capp's Tavern.
Actually, some of you might not even ever heard of Atari, because today it's only Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, and that's it. So there might be some competitors lurking on the side, with Google, with Amazon, and I think Apple wants to make their own console or something like that. But yeah, Atari was I guess not the first ones to ever make computer or video games, but they were the first to make it successful, very, very successful, with the Atari home consoles, and of course with Pong. Pong is considered to be the first game ever, I don't know, but the first very successful and recognized game that was ever made. So yeah, it's quite a shame that Atari today is maybe only considered or named for some of their IPs that might be still around, but not as a competitor on the console market. The same goes for another company. I forgot the name. That was Sega. Sega was once a very successful console developer, manufacturer as well, and today all we know of Sega is their IPs like Sonic and so on. If I bump into the microphone, please ignore that. And yeah, but that was how games as we know them today started.
Released to the public in a bar in Sunnyvale, California, called Andy Capp's Tavern. From the end of 1972 through the 1970s, Atari installed upwards of 35,000 machines in bars, bowling alleys, and arcades in the United States alone, not to mention thousands more around the world. In 1975, Atari released Home Pong. Yep, that's Pong you could play at home through Sears just in time for the holiday season. It sold 250,000 units in its first year. Not long after, in 1976,
which by that time is considered extremely successful for something entirely new, for something that most households were not even prepared for. That you have a system that you can plug into your TV, which had to have something to plug it into in the first place. So 250,000 in the first year is quite a great number.
250,000 units in its first year. Not long after, in 1976, Bushnell sold Atari to Warner Communications for somewhere in the ballpark of $28 million, which is about $120 million today. By the end of the 1970s, Atari was trying to figure out a way to consolidate all of their arcade games and separate themselves from their competitors. The Atari VCS, later named the Atari 2600, was released in October 1977, but very poor marketing and the price point, $199, equivalent to almost $800 today, made it a rather slow seller.
Imagine a console coming to the market at the price point of $800 today, which is around, I guess, 750-ish euros. But it will mostly be 800 euros as well, as we know that they do not factor in exchange rates when they make their prices. So you might remember in 2013 when the Xbox and Xbox One and PlayStation 4 came on the market, and the Xbox sold for what was it, 500 euros or $500, and the PS4 for $400, which was considered a moderate price, whereas the Xbox One was considered expensive, which is one of the main reasons why it had a very slow start. Apart from all the other shenanigans they got rid of with Spencer, what's the full name? Xbox CEO. So 800 euros is quite a lot. I've never actually, in my lifetime, when I went out to purchase consoles or something like that, I never come along and saw even such a high price. And I remember there were games that cartridges that were sold for around 120 to 140 mark back then, which is around 70 to 80 euros, but even that is considered extremely expensive.
In addition, at first, many people didn't understand you could play other games besides the various derivatives of Pong on the Atari 2600. However, with the release of Space Invaders, licensed through the company Taito in 1980,
yeah, Space Invaders, one of another huge success, especially for arcade machines. Very sought after today, I guess, the arcades, and had made its entry into pop culture. Excuse me, it's I have two cats and they are hunting each other right now. Could you please? Oh no, they don't hunt each other. They hunt insect. And now they're I don't know the English word for that. Not barking. No, not you. I didn't know meant you. Okay. Anyway, let's continue.
However, with the release of Space Invaders, licensed through the company Taito in 1980, the 2600 became a hit. Soon, a series of other games like Adventure, Pitfall, Palais Soccer, and Superman continued to skyrocket sales, eventually hitting 10 million consoles sold by 1982. The Atari 2600 was now the most popular home entertainment system ever produced.
To that date. 10 million consoles, you have to put that into context. Sure, PlayStation 2 has around 150 million, the Wii has over 100 million, and of course Game Boy and such are over 100 million, but there are still consoles out there, even modern ones from big developers or manufacturers who did not even reach this mark. So the Atari 2600 or 2600 is still among the top list of consoles, even in front of the original Xbox, which was, I don't know, around 4 million in its lifetime. The Wii U was the Wii U lower? Was it 8 million? Was it 12 million? Something around that. I don't know my console sales, but there are still even today's recognized consoles that are had less units sold than the Atari. And as he just said, it was the most successful console to that date, and still for a long time, a few years at least. I don't know what the NES. As you can see, I'm talking off the top of my head here. I have not fact checked anything and not researched anything, as I wanted to go in this video with as little research as possible. So please excuse if I have some of my numbers wrong. I might went to check these after I finished the video, and might include it like there somewhere, maybe not.
Holding an approximately 80% market share. According to the book All Your Base Belong to Us, it was actually 1981, a year before E.T. the movie was released, that Steve Ross, Steven Spielberg, and Universal began negotiating the licensing rights to turn the movie into an Atari game. The film was released in the very beginning of June 1982, and the deal was finally signed, with Atari paying a record-breaking $25 million, about $63 million today, for the rights to make the game. They gave the
remember, he just said that Atari was bought for, what was it, like $100 million. Actually, let's go a bit back. Sorry.
We're in the ballpark of $28 million, which is about $120 million today.
$28 million. So Atari was sold for $28 million, and then they went ahead and purchased licensing rights for almost the exact same money.
The mega hits Raiders of the Lost Ark and Yar's Revenge for Atari. Everything seemed to be going well, except for one thing. As so often happens to programmers,
excuse me.
Creating the licensing rights to turn the movie into an Atari game. The film was released in the very beginning of June.
Okay, it's too far. Sorry.
Games like Adventure, Pitfall, Pele, Soccer, and Superman continued to skyrocket sales, eventually hitting 10 million consoles sold by 1982. The Atari 2600 was now the most popular home entertainment system ever produced, holding an approximately 80% market share. According to the book All Your Base Belong to Us, it was actually 1981, a year before E.T. the movie was released, that Steve Ross, Steven Spielberg, and Universal began negotiating the licensing rights to turn the movie into an Atari game. The film was released in the very beginning of June 1982, and the deal was finally signed, with Atari paying a record-breaking $25 million.
Yeah, that's only $3 million less than Warner Bros. Paid to actually buy Atari. So imagine that. That's a huge amount of money.
About $63 million today for the rights to make the game. They gave the task of designing and programming said game to Howard Scott Warshaw, who had already produced the mega hits Raiders of the Lost Ark and Yar's Revenge for Atari. Everything seemed to be going well, except for one thing. As so often happens to programmers, upper management had promised the software, in this case a game, could be done in almost literally no time at all, ready for release by the 1982 holiday season. That meant the deadline would have to be September the 1st to make sure that it could hit shelves by December, giving Warshaw about 6 weeks to create, code, and test the game from scratch. For reference, a typical Atari game took at least 6 months to a year to fully design, write, and program.
Okay, just it's not a fair comparison, I know, but compare that to games today. Like The Last Guardian was announced in 2009, if I remember correctly, for PS3 at that time, and has been in development at that time, and was released like a few years ago, 2016, 2017, around that. It had been in development for years. There are games that are in development for 5 to 10 years today, and even back then, sure, graphics are lower, and it might be easier to develop a game because it has not to have much in it, due to the memory size of the cartridges and stuff. But still, as you just said, usually you take 6 months at least to code a game, and he had 6 weeks. So let me know in the comments if you think that hitting a specific release date is more important than actually taking time to make a game, which, in my opinion, is more relevant.
For reference, a typical Atari game took at least 6 months to a year to fully design, write, and program. Unsurprisingly from this, to get Warshaw to agree in the first place, Atari had to offer him about $200,000, that's about $500,000 today, for the couple of months' work, as well as a free vacation to Hawaii after he was done.
I'm wondering if he just stayed there and like went to exile after the game was smashed by critics. Like not even one single half positive word in a review to that game or from the gamers who bought it. Just go to Hawaii and stay there and never come back, and hope that your story will never be shared on Hawaii. It was the age before the internet, so yeah.
Today for the couple of months' work, as well as a free vacation to Hawaii after he was done. In order to speed up production, Atari had to skip audience gamer testing, usually an essential part of game development, and Warshaw basically had to come up with the concept of the game and general play right on the spot and just get coding on day one. Amazingly, Atari actually managed to create a workable game by the deadline, and E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari 2600 was released to the world in December of 1982 for
workable. It was a workable game. I've never actually seen actual gameplay of the game, but I've seen screenshots on it. Was like vaguely ET sized shape on a screen. That's it, and you could maybe move up, down, left, right, but not more. That's it. That's everything, and that was the game. Sure, I don't know if there was more to it, but this is what when he says workable game, you could start it, but then what?
Terrestrial for the Atari 2600 was released to the world in December of 1982 for $39.95, which, accounting for inflation, is about $100 today. With the hype around the game and Atari's anticipation that it was going to be a hit, they produced 4 million copies, thus assuming that roughly half of all console owners would buy it. Unfortunately for them, the reviews were horrible. Words like convoluted, primitive, and monotonous were often used. Coming from first-hand experience from both the author and co-author of this piece, having played the game recently in preparation for this very video, that's actually pretty accurate. For those who haven't wasted moments of their life on this game, the gameplay mostly involved players controlling E.T. and his extending neck as he floats between especially crappy-looking green spaces.
Yeah, like, what even is this? What is this supposed to represent? I know it's Atari 2600 and graphics are not a thing as they are today, and they are not even a thing as they were when like Super Mario was released. But look at this. Look, what even I mean, is that Ernie from Ernie and Bert on the left side? Is it the kid of the movie? And E.T. is green. Why is E.T. green? We see they had other colors. Why did they make him green? E.T. was, as I recall, he was like grayish, but not green.
Of course, the object here is to help E.T. phone home via collecting pieces of a phone as well as Reese's Pieces for energy. Players have to do all of this while avoiding the adults. Should you manage to get the 3 pieces of the phone and phone home, then you must get to the ship which comes to retrieve you within an allotted time slot. If you do, your prize for winning is to play the game exactly as it was before, except now the phone pieces are in different places than they were before.
Which we have to give the game credit for that, because RNG or random generated places, I guess, were not yet a thing at that time. So they actually had to code these new places. I don't know if they were random, if they actually were able to randomize that. Due to the fact that, as I just said, it was not yet a real thing. There were, like in Space Invaders, if I remember correctly, there were not, how the ships come down is not random, but there is a pattern, and it chooses from various patterns, so it stays more or less unpredictable. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm really, that's before my time. That's that's long before I even was born, let alone played video games. So I might be completely wrong here, but I guess they had not really randomized it. So in that 6 weeks, at least they had enough time to somewhat randomize where these phone parts was, I guess.
As it was before, except now the phone pieces are in different places than they were before. Beyond the game being a steaming pile of something vaguely brown and smelly, by the time it was released in December, it was a full 6 months after the movie was released. Consumers naturally were getting E.T. fatigue. Miraculously, the game did sell 1.5 million copies thanks to the holidays and parents and grandparents buying it for their kids. The problem was that this was nowhere near the 4 million copies that Atari had created, and very soon a huge amount of those that had been sold were being returned.
Yeah, just remember, there are at this point in time around 10 million Atari 2600 consoles sold. So actually manufacturing 4 million copies of a game, of which you might know beforehand that it's crap, means that you produce like 40 for 40 you expect that 40% of your player base will play that game on release, because these 4 millions are the copies that Atari was manufacturing to release and around release. So they went on and made more later. That's what I know. Somewhere, if I remember correctly, they made more copies in the end than even consoles were sold. So they at some point expected that everyone with an Atari 2600 will buy that game, and who hasn't bought the console will buy the console and the game, which is a level of confidence not even Sony has today. When you see like when it's harder to say today because games are released digitally, but when you go to physical copies, like when the PS4 launched, they only produced like 2-3 million for launch day, because they did not expect that the demand will go up so high. So producing 4 million at around that's bonkers, and $100 is a lot of money.
Atari had created, and very soon a huge amount of those that had been sold were being returned. How many? Well, Atari CEO Ray Casa stated that all but 500,000 copies got returned, leaving them with 3.5 million on hand and a whole lot of angry businesses that Atari sold their product through. Additionally, other games such as Pac-Man were on hand with no purchases to be found. Now, at this point, you might be wondering how they could have possibly had a ton of extra Pac-Mans given it sold a whopping 7 million units despite poor reviews. Well, it turns out that even though there had only ever been 10 million Atari 2600s sold at that point, and presumably a lesser number in use, Atari actually had 12 million copies of the game made. The result was an extra 5 million copies that they couldn't sell. And so it was that Atari decided to bury the evidence of their screw-ups, quite literally. Somewhere between 10 and 20 semi-trucks rambled into Alamogordo in New Mexico in September of 1983. They were carrying the discarded remnants of the most expensive video game licensing deal in history up to that point, among a lot of other mistakes. The trucks went to the city's landfill and dumped the unsold E.T. video game cartridges into a hole in the ground.
Yeah, and it was actually believed that that was some kind of myth, some exaggeration. But Microsoft went ahead a few years ago and actually went to the burial site and opened the video game grave, if you say so, and found the copies there. They made a documentary about it, whose name I have forgotten, but I will put it there for you. And it's worth watching. And they actually buried it.
His landfill and dumped the unsold E.T. video game cartridges into a hole in the ground. Funnily enough, news accounts at the time reported it was a bit like Christmas for kids in the nearby small town of Alamogordo, who went out excavating to score copies of various Atari products. To try to stop the kids digging, it's noted in a New York Times article from September 28, 1983, guards kept reporters and spectators away from the area yesterday as workers poured concrete over the dumped merchandise. For many years, despite reliable documentation like the New York Times, people believed that this burial was an urban legend, including Howard Scott Warshaw himself. In an interview with the AV Club in 2005, when asked if the landfill story was true or false, Warshaw answered, "I say false." But Warshaw wasn't.
So does that mean that the developer of the game, the main developer, did not even know what happened to his game? That they buried it? Okay, I thought they would inform him. Maybe they did, and he just, pretend to not know.
The landfill story was true or false. Warshaw answered, "I say false." But Warshaw wasn't correct. It did, in fact, happen. On April 26, 2014, financed by Fuel Entertainment and Xbox, who were producing a documentary about the video game crash that followed directly after, a team of excavators uncovered many E.T. games, among others, buried in a landfill in the New Mexico desert.
Yeah, near Mexico. The video game crash was actually, as I said in the beginning, only mostly affecting the West, so Europe and the US. And in Japan, video games just sold like ever. And in Europe, especially in Germany, consoles haven't been a thing for that long, and even today are not the most prominent platform to play games on, because especially Germans, but if I remember correctly, most Europeans are more PC gamers or predecessors of the PC, like the Commodore 64 and other PC-like gaming systems. It's arguably if the C64 is a PC or is a console. I mean, it has elements of both, but the reason is, or I was told, the reason is that in at least in Germany, the games were easier to pirate because you don't need a cartridge. You even in the time before the internet went off, you could just copy a floppy disk. You could just copy a CD when that came around, and just play the game. There was no huge copyright protection like there is today with DMCA and all that stuff. The highest amount of copyright protection you had was, if I remember correctly, with the original Monkey Island, where you had like some kind of paper thingy mechanism where you had to turn around things. I don't know. I've never played Monkey Island until the re-release in 2009, where that wasn't a thing anymore. But I heard that they had some physical mechanism. And I myself had once a game. I had the original disc of the game, but I did not have the handbook. But the protection of the game was that you have to look up on a specific page on a specific word, which was randomly asked for in the manual, and I didn't have the manual, so I never could play that game. But yeah, there was that is why PC gaming in Germany and most of Europe, Western Europe, is more popular than, or was more popular than consoles. I don't say this is still the reason, but we all know there is piracy out there.
While the boxes were not intact any longer, many of the cartridges were, for all intents and purposes, in okay shape. As for how many were found, filmmakers only managed to dig up about 1,300 cartridges. This was because the city itself wasn't too keen on the project and gave a digging permit of just 1 day, with only a few hours of actual digging taking place. That said, according to one former Atari employee, James Haller, who helped organize the landfill dumping in the first place, he estimated the actual number of games cartridges of various types buried there to be closer to 730,000, though what Atari did with the many millions of other cartridges is anybody's guess.
Yeah, what did they? Maybe you know. Write it in the comments if you know, or if you have a guess what they did with all the other cartridges. But personally, I would imagine they just either dumped it somewhere else, or I don't know if they were able to rewrite the cartridges, so just delete the game and put a new game on it. But that would mean that they were games after ET, and we all know that didn't happen in that form. Atari was more or less dead after ET, so I don't know.
Surprisingly, of the recovered games from the landfill, the city was able to auction off about 900 of them, earning a gross profit of $107,930.15 in the process. Atari was never the same after the ET flop, which was the pinnacle of a series of missteps by the company's management, with this one not only costing an incredible amount of money, but also permanently damaging consumer and industry trust in the brand. Unfortunately for them, this occurred simultaneously to other games consoles starting to capture the market with more innovative products and better games. And of course, there was also that video game crash that came directly thereafter. As Warshaw put it in an AV Club interview, Atari's a company that goes from the most expensive and successful company in American history to the fastest failing company in American history. They went from nothing to $2 billion in sales in just a couple of years, and then the next year they lost $500 million. And speaking of better and more innovative games, Star Conflict, and I want to tell you about that game before we get into the bonus facts today. In Star Conflict, you can take part in epic space battles where you can fly over 240 different spaceships from 4 different factions.
It
There's
helps
loads of
their
different ships
channel,
to choose from, and you can find
so
something that really matches
it's
with
only
your
fair
style of play.
to
Maybe
let
you're
it-
someone who likes to get just a giant destroyer and
to
go
not,
destroy
skip
things, or
it.
maybe you're more of a nimble interceptor sort of person. Huge range of ships, lots to choose from. And what can you do in the game? Well, there's P2P, cooperative raids, and it's all open world, so There's lots of different things to try, there's lots of danger, lots of rewards. It's a game that's super easy to get into as well. You can just load it up and start playing, or if you've been playing it for a while, you get a bit better. There's really plenty of things to master, so the game will keep you entertained for a long time. It's a lot of fun, it's free, it's a great way to support the show. Get a Black Hawk spaceship for free.
Not my type of game,
days
but
of account boost.
if you enjoy,
just click the link below to get started, and let's get into those bonus facts. Another game that was popular and vies for the worst game of all time is another 1982 Atari title called Beat 'em and Eat 'em. Was this perhaps
Never
a game
heard.
where you beat some characters or animals and then ate them? Well, no.
What did it say? Swedish erotica. Okay, adult video game cartridge. So the Rule 34 applied even in that time. If there is something like video games, then you make porn with it, out of it, or something else. Adult video game cartridge for use with the Atari video game system, not for sale to minors.
It turns out that this was just a game where you play two women who just so happen to be sans clothes and standing on a street corner. Not as dark as you might expect, given the title and the description we just gave. Instead, above the women, on a rooftop, is a man who, well, we'll just say that he shoots a certain whitish substance at them from his happy place. Your job as the women is to catch said substance in your mouth. Think Space Invaders, but actually trying to catch the aliens instead of shoot or avoid them. Should you miss any, you lose, and the round is played again, though after 4 misses, the game is over. Should you catch it all, you get to observe the pixelated women happily licking their lips, and then you proceed to the next round with everything happening faster. Funnily enough, when you get to 69 points, you get an extra turn, which allows for an additional miss. Doubling down on this gem of a game is another by the same makers called Philly Flasher, where two men stand below and try to catch breast milk squirted at them from a woman above. Should you successfully catch it all in your mouth, you get the honor of watching the men play with themselves. Yes, really. Moving swiftly on, Bushnell's inspiration for creating Chuck E. Cheese's occurred when he noticed that while Atari could generally expect to make between $1,500 and $2,000 for every coin-operated arcade machine they sold, the person buying them could reliably expect the machine to generate 10 times that amount during its lifetime. In Bushnell's own words, "It didn't take rocket science to say I'm on the wrong side of the equation." Just as a quick aside here, for those of you already heading to the comments, contrary to popular belief, Showbiz Pizza Time did not come before Chuck E. Cheese's. It was the other way around. In any
I don't know either of them. Chuck E. Cheese, I only know the name Chuck E. Cheese from the epic rap battles of history with McDonald's versus Burger King, where Burger King says to Ronald McDonald that he's played out like a Chuck E. Cheese token. And then I went into it and discovered that there is a place called Chuck E. Cheese, and they had like gaming machines, or have gaming, I don't know, but I don't know if that pizza place. We don't have such thing. We don't have arcades or stuff like that in that. I mean, we have indoor fun parks and stuff, and we have places where you can go and play games, and I think there were like arcade game locations in the 90s and early 2000s, but not that big, not in a franchise way or something. So
Showbiz Pizza Time did not come before Chuck E. Cheese's. It was the other way around. In any event, after a little research, Bushnell concluded that maximizing profits from arcade games and the like was all about securing a location and having a captive audience, two things he reasoned could be easily achieved with a restaurant. Bushnell's idea was to then create a restaurant where food was, as he described, an ancillary service, and the real draw was the games and entertainment. Towards this end, Bushnell decided that his restaurant should sell pizza, reasoning that it would be impossible to screw up such a simple foodstuff as long as the ingredients were good, and the time it took to make it would be just more time for the kids to play the games. According to Bushnell, the working name for his pet project was originally Coyote Pizza. As such, he bought a coyote costume that he saw at a trade show, which he then sent to his engineers with a note instructing them to shove a robot inside it and make it talk. Unfortunately for Bushnell, what he thought was a coyote costume turned out to actually be a rat costume, which his engineers dutifully pointed out when he asked them, "How's the coyote coming?" At this stage of the game, Bushnell decided it would be easier to rename the restaurant than, send the costume back and get a different one, so he told his marketing team that he now wanted to call the restaurant Rick Rat's Pizza. The marketing team, according to Bushnell, had a fit. You can't call a restaurant a rat place. People think rats are dirty. It's not going to work. Bushnell's response was to tell them to pick another name if it was such a big deal, adding, "I don't give a what it is, but it has to be happy." The name they eventually settled on was Chuck E. Cheese's, apparently because you have to smile a couple of times while saying it.
Chuck E. Cheese's. Oh, okay. Makes sense.
Amazingly, the scheme worked and the chain exploded in popularity, even after a pretty catastrophic fall in more modern times when the games and entertainment there became more than antiquated. The company still managed to sell for just shy of $1 billion in 2014, with the new ownership taking steps to modernize the whole affair, and well over 600 locations are still in operation worldwide today. So I really hope you found that video interesting. Please do support this show by supporting our great sponsor, Star Conflict. There is a link below, and I'll see you next time.
Hi there, Future Aussie here. Before we come to the end segment, I have to make some corrections of what I just said in this video. First, the video game crash occurred from 1983 to 1985, mostly in the US and more or less Europe. It's known as the Atari shock in Japan, and while the NES came on the market in 1983 in Japan, it was branded in for the West in, and the initial New York sale was in October 1985, and in 1986 it went back to somewhat normal. I did obviously confuse E.T. and Pac-Man in regards to the actual units that were produced. As he just said after me in the video, Pac-Man was the game which was produced 12 million times, and E.T. was like 4 million times. And so they did not produce more ET than they did than they had sold consoles. But yeah, that's everything, and now on to the end segment. Yeah. So that was the worst video game in history that helped sink the Titan of the industry. Like I said in the beginning, I was pretty sure it was about Atari and E.T. I've learned a lot of new stuff. I did not know, for example, that the Chuck E. Cheese guy was the founder of Atari. I did not know that the sale of E.T. also had an impact on Pac-Man, which is today everyone knows Pac-Man. Pac-Man is one of the most iconic video game figures of all time. He's featured in the MCU with Planes of the Galaxy, sure, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and that other film by Adam Sandler, which we can all forget about, but nonetheless it is in there. It is in Wreck-It Ralph, if I remember correctly. So it is very, very recognized, and E.T. just almost screw it for not only for Pac-Man, but as we learned, for the whole video game industry, more or less, because after that the potential buyers, the gamers, were more cautious what they will buy, what they will put their money into, and turned their back to video games for now. Like we all know, the video game crash was a real crash, but it did not last that long. Like I said, in 1983, when Super Mario was released, and later brought to the West, especially the US. I think maybe it was 1984 586, something like that. Mario was on the market for quite some time, until it came to the US. I don't really remember off the top of my head how long. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Please, if you did so, leave a like and subscribe, and you will find the link to the original video in the description. Please go there, let them have a like and subscribe as well. Yeah, and watch their ads and stuff like that, so you can support them as well. If you want to support me, just subscribing, liking is fine. Yeah, stick around for the next videos. I will try to release a video every second day, if possible. Yeah, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye bye.